right, good morning and welcome to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we're going to talk about evacuations. Wildfires are happening in many different places in Canada and around the world, and we want to simply present to you your options for you, your family, and your small business. It's a timely discussion. I think it's important. So sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverage, and let's get at her. All right, evacuations happen when somebody decides that it is better to put everybody on a road to get them out of an area or put them in boats and get them out of an area than it is to leave them where they are. Evacuations in Canada under law, they're called mandatory. In reality, they're not. There's no legal standing for a government agent or a police officer, fire department, whatever, to come into your house and physically remove you from your house. Now, let's be clear. The intelligent thing to do is follow direction of people who probably have access to a lot more information than you do, and they're giving you advice. In fact, there's generally several different types of warning. Unfortunately, this goes by different names in different areas. You'll hear things like evacuation warning. Your neighborhood has been put on evacuation alert. They'll come up with a whole bunch of really interesting names. None of it's really coordinated what it means. And then at some time in the future, the government may issue a mandatory evacuation order for a specific group of people or area. And likely with that mandatory evacuation order is going to come a route. Hey, you need to get out of here, and here's the route we would like you to use, right? So it's generally communicated in an emergency alert on your cell phone, or it can be communicated on the website through radio, media partners, etc. Generally speaking, we always teach here at Preparedness Labs Incorporated and our podcast here Inside My Canoe Head, which you see the old artwork up over my shoulder. The new artwork is up online. It's on our website. Feel free to give me your feedback on it. We always believe, and the evidence is clear, that when you and your family and your small business are faced with some type of calamity, you literally have two options. There is only two things that a human family can do, right? You can bug in, bug out. You can stay or go. You can shelter in place or evacuate. You can choose the nomenclature. Choose whatever set of words that you feel most comfortable with. But all you can do is stay in your location, in your home, in your safe place, or leave your safe place and go somewhere else. That's literally it. So when we're talking about evacuations, we're talking about a rare occurrence, but we argue, based upon our research and based upon experience, is that it's likely the most dangerous event related to a disaster that a family can go through. It's dangerous because in your shelter-in-place location, in your in your home where everything you own is, all your stuff and all your widgets and everything, you feel safe. It's a safe place, right? You, your family, have a lower level of stress and anxiety when you're at home where your stuff is, where it's comfortable, where you feel loved. When you have to abandon that, often on short notice or no notice, because of an event that's beyond your control, and you're asked to jump onto the road with all of your neighbors at the same time, which turns into a traffic jam, and we'll get why those are a significant problem in a minute, it's an incredibly high-stress environment, right? We've seen the data and the research is clear. Your stress level goes through the roof. Your anxiety level goes through the roof. Coordination falls apart. And everything that we know there leads us to ask the question, I don't want to evacuate, but if I have to, what's the good way to do this? What is the easiest, most intelligent way to run away from my home if I have to, right? If I have to go, where do I go? What do I take? And what is my insurance coverage? Those are your three things you got to worry about, right? So we're going to cover them in order. And this is based upon research that we've gathered over about 13 years of looking at wildfire, flood evacuations, and other industrial type of things, and reason why people go. Successful evacuations. Now, successful evacuations are not just getting out alive. Really, very few people perish in Canada due to wildfires. The number's not zero, but very few ever. So if you just think a successful evacuation is getting out alive, well, then you don't have to do anything because everybody does that anyhow, right? So successful evacuations are not just getting out of Dodge. Successful evacuations are well executed, well managed, and well controlled plans. It's you doing exactly what you intend to do in times of chaos. And this is created by looking at all of the evacuations that are done in the past, and then look at the parts of the population, or the groups of people that have done exceptionally well, right? So people who have had to execute evacuations and things went really, really well. They had pretty low levels of stress and anxiety. And even though they weren't happy about the situation, they were absolutely able to control it, manage it, and get on with their day and get on with their lives and carry on because they had a strategy. And that strategy talks about those three things we talked about. The first successful thing that you have to have in wildfire evacuation is an absolute, unconditional, guaranteed place to go. Full stop. That's it. Ideally, it's going to be in a friend and family basement because when you leave, you're going to go to one of three places. The worst place, it's there for a reason, but is a public shelter. So think of a arena with like 250 families or 250 people on cots inside of a hockey arena, right? There's next to no privacy or no privacy. You're in bulk. There's a whole bunch of social problems that exist inside of there. You might not have Wi-Fi, and if you do, you're dealing with the hockey rink's Wi-Fi, so you have very little access to the internet. You'll be fed in some type of, buffet style line, sitting on your cots trying to eat food, random food that was created with love and affection for you. But think about putting you and your family in that situation and ask yourself whether that is the best place to restart your life, to be on the phone with your insurance adjuster, trying to figure out what's going on, what might happen next with your home, what might not happen, what are your opportunities, what can you do, what are your responsibilities, all these things moving forward, and you're sitting in that kind of an environment. It is the least happy place to be, but it exists necessarily for rapid onset evacuations where people don't have any other place to go. The second option is a commercial establishment. So think of the Motel 6, not the Fairmont, but the Motel 6, local motel, and that's where you go. Now think about this. Most evacuations out of built-up areas, you're going to be gone for a couple of weeks, and we're going to get on that in a moment. You're going to be gone for a couple of weeks. Think about your bank account and your credit card limit and how easy it is for you to carry a $200 a night hotel room for 2 to 3 weeks. And oh, by the way, all of your family are stuck in one room. You're going to be eating takeout food because there's no cooking facilities other than a really old and weak microwave and a mini fridge. And you're all stuck in the same room. You're all competing for the same Wi-Fi. And you're really just jam-packed in there. I mean, I love my family. There's nothing. I love my family, but let's serious. Like, after 2 weeks of all of us stuck in one hotel room, things are going to start to fray a bit at the edges, right? And my bank account and my credit card are going to take some serious, significant hits. The third option, and the one we recommend based upon research, is having family and friends, right? A place to go, that's going to be available to you 24/7, probably 150, 200 kilometers away, in a place that is likely not to be affected by the same calamity and hazard, and that you and this family you're going to and your family have reciprocal agreements, like they can come to your house anytime, no notice, and hang out for a couple of weeks due to an evacuation. You can do the same to them. Just think about the environment. You're in a place of love. You're in a calm place. You're in a place with less stress. You're in a place with less anxiety. You're using somebody's home internet. You're eating good food, access to normal household facilities, and it's an incredibly lower level of stress and anxiety. And oh, by the way, it doesn't cost you any money. You might throw in some pizza on Friday, but in general, the costs related to all the others are exceptionally lower. Now, does this happen overnight? No. It's your responsibility to decide whether you want to have a predetermined place to go at low to no cost that you can trust and you can show up. I'll give you an example. I live in Ottawa. I have a friend that lives slightly north of Kingston, Ontario, about 140 kilometers from here, and we have a reciprocal agreement. My basement is his and his basement is mine whenever we need it, no questions asked, for the period of time necessary for the evacuation. I know that when I evacuate my house, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter the hazard and it doesn't matter the reason. I know exactly where I'm going. I know I will be received with open arms, and I know it's free and it won't cost me anything. My anxiety goes down, my family stress level goes down, everything calms down as much as it can in the environment. I'm not trying to compete for a hotel room. Welcome to supply and demand. What happens when 300 families get displaced? Capitalism, baby. The prices of the hotel rooms start getting jacked up every night because the demand is there for the hotel to make more money. And on top of that, all the local hotels, I don't want to eat Chick-fil-A and Mary Brown's fried chicken for 2 weeks, right? I want real food cooked in a regular kitchen, made with love, caring, and support, surrounded by people who are really interested in my family being successful. And that having to be able to sit in a nice lazy boy with a cool wobbly pop while I talk to my insurance adjuster is far better than trying to do so with one finger pushed in the ear to try to hear in the middle of a room with 200 of my closest friends on Red Cross cots, right? It's a choice. Do you have it right now? Maybe not. Do you want to negotiate it? Absolutely. That's completely up to you. That is point one. And before we get on to point two, I want to talk about why it takes a couple of weeks to get back into a place when you evacuate. So if you think that the town of Flin Flon, Manitoba right now has been evacuated, whether or not it burns, when it becomes safe for people to return, there has to be a process. If you think about all of the systems, the critical infrastructure systems that work in a community, they have to be up and running before the residents are allowed back in. So the police, fire, and EMS has to be running. The hospital has to be up, and there has to be at least one working operating room and an emergency room. The water purification system has to be turned back on and running. Any hazardous materials have to be cleared. All of the supporting infrastructures, from doctors' offices to pharmacies to grocery stores, all of that has to be restarted, restocked, cleaned out, and up and running before you can allow society to return. So often you will see politicians get angry at emergency management folks when they say, I want people back tomorrow. And they're like, dude, this is going to take us a week to get the city back up and running. I'm not a chemical expert, but one individual told me once it takes about 72 hours for the bacterial culture in the water treatment plant to get back up and running after it's been shut down, right? So if you want potable water, if you want all these other things, because what you don't want to do is bring the population back to a community that is how do we say this? That is not ready, right? That doesn't have water, doesn't have healthcare. Now you're just you're adding on to the stress level. You're adding on to the potential injuries that may happen when people return. And then it has to be staged, right? Because we've seen evacuations in those long lineups, and we'll get to that in a minute. But just so you know, there is a reasonable and logical reason why, after the hazard has been cleared and after the threat has gone away, there is still a period of time, sometimes up to a week, before people can be allowed back in. And it's rational, intelligent, and backed up by evidence. It's not what people want to hear, but it's the reality, and it's how the world works, right? So the second thing that people often fight with and argue with is, what do I bring? If I have to evacuate, what do I bring? Like, what do I grab and take? And I was an expert advisor on CBC's Marketplace in the season in 2023, where we conducted, as part of their disaster season opening episode, we conducted an experiment on 3 families in the Nova Scotia area, in the Halifax area, where they knew they were going to be on CBC's Marketplace, and they knew they were going to be talking about disasters, etc. But they didn't know that we were going to come in, give them 5 minutes, and say, 5 minutes you have to evacuate. What are you taking? And we had camera crews there, and they filmed them running around their house and grabbing things to see what people would grab. And then I was brought on as the disaster expert to provide them advice and score them as to how they might have done. One family did fairly well, but in general, people in high stress, high anxiety, no notice areas don't make great decisions, right? They're irrational. They're working on emotions. And it's that old adage of, people never rise to the occasion. They fall to their level of training, right? That's why military special operations soldiers are so good under stress. It's not that they're superhuman and really great people. It's that they've done this repetition 1,000 times, right? They've breached a door and entered a room in a 4-man stack 1,000 times. So it doesn't matter what's going on. Every little muscle movement from their pinky to their thumb is rehearsed and well choreographed, right? If you don't understand how you're going to evacuate, it'll just be as Clint Eastwood would say, a cluster what? You know what I mean? Like, that's what it looks like. I've seen it in person, been part of the experiments. It's an absolute nightmare. So what we always recommend is you have some type of list, right? Some type of list that you create, that you and your family sit down and decide, hey, listen, if we had to evacuate in our car, knowing that there's 5 of us and the dog, don't forget the pets, knowing that we're going to only be able to fit this much stuff in the back of our car, what would we take? And you go through this evolution in times of peace and calm, and you create a list of what you want to take and its regular location in the house. And then you print that off, you laminate it, and you put it in a place. So what happens when the balloon goes up and you get a no-notice rapid onset evacuation out of your house? You open the junk drawer, you pull out the list, you set it down, and now you're executing a plan. There's no thinking, right? Your brain is not firing on a million other things, but right now, you know. And if you're really good at this, you have the 4 people, and they're each assigned to grab a series of things that they know exactly where it is, right? You've decided that this list is appropriate for you, your family, what you want, what you believe in, what you love, and you've got it ready for your family. So when the balloon goes up, your family grabs what your family's decided is most important to it and gets in the car and goes. Am I worried about you bringing food, water, and all? No, because guess what? The total number of people in Canada to die of starvation and lack of potable water due to evacuation is absolutely 0. So no, I don't care about food, water, and all that other crap that you hear about on the apocalyptic TV channels and your government talking to you. I'm talking about what you want to take, what you want to bring with you, and what is priceless. Because when I ask families what is priceless, what the answer I get is everything. They've got a U-Haul worth of stuff they want to take. Well, guess what? Very few things are. This is one of mine. This is the only thing. It's my dad's Bible. It's got an inscription from my great-grandmother in the front from 1955. I can't get that again, right? No matter what I do, I can't get that again. So that's just the reality of the world that I live in. That's on my list, and a few other things. Other than that, I can eventually burn this all down. When it burns all down, I can replace it with insurance. Our third thing, insurance. The number one thing, when you look at your family's insurance plan, as I've got mine here, as I'm going through it right now with my insurance agent, when you look at your family's insurance, you're looking at, are you intimately aware of what's in your insurance? Are you intimately aware of what is covered and what is not covered based upon your policy exclusions? Often when people buy fire insurance as part of their mortgage application, they will shop around to a broker and they're looking for the least cost minimum level of coverage, right? Absolutely happy, don't want to spend money. We don't view insurance as an investment. We view insurance as an expense, right? The problem is when you have the fire, when you have the loss, when you have the earthquake damage, you get up And then you find out why you got the low price policy. You realize the terms and conditions, the exclusions that are in that really affordable policy. And now you're screwed. There's no other way to describe it. You and your family are absolutely screwed because you bought the cheapest insurance you could, because saving $30 or $40 on a monthly payment or $500 on an annual premium was your goal. And now you're faced with a $500,000 loss that is only partially or not even covered at all because you decided not to buy that additional rider policy because at the time $500 was important to you. Well, guess what? Now you burn. The question here is, are you intimately familiar with all of the clauses in your insurance policy, right? These insurance policies have all kinds of millions of little clauses in them. Do you know them? Do you know everything about them? Do you know exactly what your duties and responsibilities are when you have a loss? What is the insurance company expecting you to do? Do you currently have a list of items that are valuable items that are in your home? Do you know the replacement cost of those? Does your insurance company cover replacement cost, or does your insurance company only cover depreciated loss? Or is your insurance company only covering things that you rebuy? You might have had $250,000 of things in your house of value, but then you realize in your new place, you're like, I only want like 100,000 of this. Do I get the other 150 or is it lost? And do I have to go out and buy it on my credit card first, give the receipt and get reimbursed? Those are all really important questions that if you look in the chats about all of the people in the groups that have gone through wildfire losses in Canada in the last several years, you will see insurance is one of the top rated things that is talked about and totally, absolutely misunderstood. If you're lucky, you'll get your house rebuilt in 2 to 3 years in Canada, right? Because look around the building boom. There are no construction companies sitting around with nothing to do. So if you want your house rebuilt, somebody has to stop doing a current project and come over and build your house. So there has to be a significant, massive amount of money, of value in that for them to abandon this project or put it off to come do your project. So what's also happening is the actual cost to rebuild your home might be 30 or 40% higher due to supply and demand of construction materials and construction workers in a loss. And then I'm going to ask you, does your insurance coverage cover that market specific increase in cost that's above the estimated cost? So if they estimate it's $500,000 to rebuild your house and the reality it actually costs $625,000, are you certain that extra $125 is paid for by your insurance company? Are you absolutely certain? Because if you don't know your policy, you can't tell me that that's the truth. So when you look at that, you got to understand your insurance policy. So if we circle back to the top, 3 things that you can do to have a healthy, robust, and properly executed evacuation plan. 1, have a predetermined location. You know exactly where you're going. 2, you know exactly what you're taking with you. Without question, you have the list. Everybody knows their duty and responsibility. The third one is you know your insurance plan inside and out. I just spent an hour this week when I was renewing my house insurance. I spent an hour on the phone going through a whole series of scenarios and what ifs and possibilities and what these different clauses meant in the insurance program. That's a minimum of what you should be doing every year when you renew your house insurance. It has little or nothing to do about the premium cost and everything to do about the coverage. Now, there are a couple things that have to be considered outside of that. One of the things that a lot of people talk about online, and it's an important thing, is communication. How will we know we have to go? How will we communicate with people if there's loss of critical infrastructure? If the cell phones are jam-packed? What happens if I'm at my work, my wife's at her work, our 2 kids are at 2 different schools in town, and an evacuation order is issued? What happens when I can't get a hold of anybody because the cell phone towers are jammed? Having a robust strategy specific to your family as to who's going to do what is important. For example, my last place that I lived in before I moved to Ottawa, my wife and I had a very clear strategy as to who would move where, who would go get which kid, and we didn't need to talk to each other. We knew that when an evacuation order was imminent or ordered, we didn't have to text my wife, are you going to get so-and-so? Am I going to get so-and-so? Or where are we meeting? All of that was predetermined. We just got up from our positions and we executed the family plan. No communications required. Now, don't get me wrong. It's great if you can communicate, but we knew exactly what to do when we could not communicate. And that was super critical and important for our success, right? So communication is key, but I would argue more important is, what do you do? What is everybody's job and responsibility when you can't communicate? When there's simply no way to reach your family members, they're dispersed around the town. What is each individual family member expected to do in that type of calamity, right? It's once you have it figured out and everybody understands it, again, what we're doing by planning a horrible event is we're reducing stress, we're reducing anxiety, we're making people breathe easier in a calamity. Because remember, when the balloon goes up and the rapid onset no notice event happens and you've got to run out of Dodge, when you've got a well-rehearsed and well-understood plan that the family calmly, to the best of the ability in the circumstances, is executing, you're doing far better than anybody else. The second thing that I want to say about evacuations is often what I mentioned before about emergency management folks and political folks think just getting people out of the building or getting them out of the town is success, right? These really long lineups on roads, etc., is not a sign of success, right? It's really not, and it doesn't have to happen. I study transportation planning and the movements of goods up and down roads as a logistician in the Army for years, and we would never tolerate that kind of thing. That would be actually looked at as failure when you see a long line of vehicles stuck on it. There are ways to do it. Does your municipality have that plan? Does your municipality have what we refer to in the business as route maintenance? So who's doing the mechanical? Who's clearing broken down vehicles? Who's providing gas to people on that route? Who's providing emergency medical service to people on the route? Who's boosting the cell phone signal on the route? All of those things are part of evacuation planning that never happens. Like, it literally never happens. I have yet to see one municipality in Canada that has an evacuation plan that considers anything beyond get them away from the hazard and then contact a reception city and have a reception center set up. Nobody plans what happens on the route. How do I deal with all the contingencies? How do I move broken down vehicles, etc. Right? And it's just, let's be honest, it's piss poor planning, but fair enough. That's what they think success is. They're wrong, but that's the current and going belief. And that is just mind-boggling, but whatever, you can only help people so much, right? Gotta love coffee, man. I'm fueled by wonderful coffee. So think about this. In the face of the wildfires, which you see on TV, if you're not facing this kind of evacuation notice, if you're not facing this kind of threat, I'm offering you that you are watching a lesson in life. You are seeing communities go through it. You're seeing evacuation stories. You're seeing interviews from public shelters. You're talking to people about the economic pressure that's on them from the additional costs of evacuation. And you're looking at a clear demonstration of what not to do and not how to execute it. You're getting all the evidence you need in real time on the news. Learn from this. Sit down with your family, however that's defined, and that could be multi-generational, multi-location, your community, your neighborhood. Be the catalyst in your neighborhood to stand up and say, hey, folks, this happened over here. I think we should get together and start having a conversation of what would evacuation look like in my neighborhood? How do we think we would do this? And how, as a community, how can we help each other get more prepared, get better positioned so that all of us have a successful healthier, happier evacuation. Because remember, if you're out of your house and you lose your house, what is the next step? You might get the insurance squared away, etc. But now you have to, where's your family going to live for the next 2 years? And oh, by the way, what's your plan? What if your job didn't burn down in the town that you just drove 200 kilometers away from a town? Your house is burnt down. There's no additional there's no additional residence for your family. Like there's no open rentals for your family to go to in the town. So your family's stuck 200 kilometers away, but your place of work is fine. So guess what? Monday morning, your boss, once everybody returns to the city, your boss expects you to be at work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 from a place 200 kilometers away. Are you ready to travel those routes? Are you ready to pay those bills? There's a lot of additional considerations as to what, when you do have a loss, what that next 2 to 3 years looks like. And it's walking your way through. If I had to leave Ottawa and couldn't stay here, where would I go? If I lost access to the physical location where my job is done, and I've used this many times on the podcast before, the example of the Class A mechanic, right? If you're a Class A mechanic and your mechanic shop burns down in a wildfire, what is your boss intending to do? Is he going to throw up a bunch of tents? Is he going to rent a circus tent, rent a bunch of equipment, and be back up and running, offering services to the neighborhood in a week? Or is he planning to rebuild, so he's going to reopen the shop in 2 years, right? One has you a week's loss of wages, and for heavenly, I hope you have all that money set aside. But if your wages just went away and there's no other Class A mechanic jobs available in the town for the next 2 years, what are you doing? Or are you going to wait until that calamity event happens? And when that happens is when you think it's a really good time to start to figure out what you do next. That's why we argue and talk in this podcast about ideas. What are you going to do? Like, if you lose your job due to a disaster, a wildfire, a flood, whatever it may be, where are you going to earn your income? This is when we get back to our roadmap to resilience, which is available on our Substack. It's available on this YouTube channel, and it's available on the podcast app. It's a 5-part series that teaches you these things. And in part 3 is your trifecta of preparedness plans, right? We've looked at all the research. There's literally 3 plans that your family has to have, and that's it. And you're good for any hazard, no matter what happens. 1, we talked about today, which is your evacuation plan. Number 2 is your shelter in place, the opposite. Because remember, you only have 2 things you could do. When an emergency happens, you either shelter in place or you evacuate. You bug in or you bug out. You don't have any other options. So you have those 2. But the third trifecta of preparedness plans, one that's just as important as evacuation or bugging in, is when you're fired. What is your exact specific guidelines and strategy to replace your lost income? When you get fired today or tomorrow morning at work, you get fired. Now, you could get fired because the place burned down, or you get fired because the company went bankrupt. It doesn't matter. What specifically and exactly are you going to do to replace that lost income? Because it's not somebody else's responsibility, the government or community, to pay your bills while you're running around searching for work, right? I'm asking you right now and looking you square in the face. What is your strategy? What is your exact methodology you're going to use to earn a similar income when you get fired? Full stop. That's your trifecta of preparedness plans. And that rolls into evacuations, because an evacuation and a wildfire going through, it may burn your home and your business, or it may burn one or the other, right? You don't know which one, but be prepared on every day to know exactly what you and your family are going to do when you get fired. That makes your evacuation that much easier, because you know that if I get fired, I know what to do. So if a wildfire goes through town and it takes out my house and it takes out my business, I've lost my job and I've lost my home, I know what I'm going to do. Doesn't mean it's going to be emotionally zero. You're still going to have an emotional roller coaster. You're still going to have all kinds of struggles to go through, but you are going to be much further along than everybody else. You're not going to be running around like a chicken with its head's cut off. You're going to be executing a well-rehearsed plan, which puts you eons above everybody else, reducing the stress and anxiety in your family, being the leader that your family calls for. And when you spread this out in the community and your neighbors, you build a massive amount of resilience around you, so all of you are more successful post-event. That's the idea. Hopefully today's podcast was really helpful for you. Welcome to the visual. I'm going to learn about this, lighting, all this other stuff. Send me your feedback. Tell me what you think. Drop it in the comments. Give me suggestions. And please keep your ideas coming for the podcast. We've got our schedule out to August. worked on, but if something wonderful pops up, we will definitely jump in. If you've got some ideas from guests, I do periodically interview guests, more so I like to talk about pertinent, important issues. We got some interesting ones coming up on minimalism. It's hilarious how tight the physical possession of objects and preparedness is tied. So we're going to talk about what is useful and what is not. We've got episodes planned on how to succeed in a chaotic life, how to build a life strategy. So as you have political, economic, and natural disasters going off everywhere, we're heading into a recession. Our politicians are making crazy decisions right, left, and center that none of us understand. And natural disasters are happening right, left, and center. Wildfires, climate change, everything else. You're in the middle of that. You're trying to succeed. You're trying to rock it. You're trying to build a business. How do you be successful? We have all of that for you. So thanks very much for joining us again this week at Inside My Canoe Head. Take care and stay safe.